What's up, Fox? I'm Fox here, and today we are talking about the RX 480 in 2023. The AMD Radeon RX 480 that I have today has 4 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory, 1120 MHz base clock, 1266 MHz boost clock, has a 150 watt TDP, has 2304 shading units, it has 1 HDMI port, 3 display ports, and uses 1 6-pin connector. And it released on June 29, 2016. Now, it may seem like 2016 was only 4 years ago, but in fact it was 7, and I hate that. But this was a generation where really things started to pick up. The GTX 10 series is still one of the most popular used series of cards, and AMD was starting to become competition in the graphics card space with these cards. So without any further ado, let's take a look and see if the RX 480 is still good in 2023. Starting off with Starfield at the lowest settings, which takes down the resolution to 50% of 1080p, we saw an average frame rate of 32, a 1% low of 26, and a 0.1% low of 24. So you're going to be able to squeak just barely by with 30 FPS. And the game is going to look terrible in doing so, but that is because Starfield is an incredibly difficult to run game. And Starfield should not be the benchmark for all 2023 games, because a game that's even newer, Lies of P, was able to run at the high settings at 1080p with an average frame rate of 77, a 1% low of 36, and a 0.1% low of 6. So there was a little bit of stutter here and there, but it only happened once or twice throughout my entire gaming session, and the fact that we were able to get almost 80 FPS out of this card is absolutely insane to me, considering it is 7 years old, and considering the result that Starfield had. Not to mention the game looks pretty good too. Up next is Counter-Strike 2 with the lowest settings to get as many frames as possible at 1080p. We saw anywhere between 180 and 290 FPS. Now MSI Afterburner doesn't like CSGO, so I called it CSGO, CS2, excuse me. So I just had to eyeball the frame rate from the in-game Steam overlay, which you are also seeing as well. Now, the thing is, we were getting a lot of FPS. 180 to 290 is not a bad result. However, chances are you're not running an RX 480 with a 5900X, and that is going to be the limiting factor in most scenarios for CS2. So it's more dependent on your CPU. But if you have a strong CPU, the 480 will not hold it back whatsoever. It will run very well. Up next is the Resident Evil 4 remake with the balanced preset at 1080p. We saw an average frame rate of 50 with a 1% low of 26 and a 0.1% low of 15. So a good result. You may want to take it down a little bit if you want to get 60 FPS, but in overall, 50 FPS was a pretty good target to hit for the balanced preset. Diablo IV was able to run at the high settings at 1080p with an average frame rate of 73, a 1% low of 57, and a 0.1% low of 5. So there was stutter present, but judging by the 1% low frame rate, it wasn't too bad. And again, it was a very impressive result, even though it is a top-down sort of bird's eye RPG. I was surprised that 2023 games could run so well on this machine. Overwatch 2 up next. At the high settings at 1080p, we saw an average frame rate of 141, a 1% low of 106, and a 0.1% low of 21. No surprise, the RX 480 is still going to be great at esport titles. Anything from CS2 to Valorant should run fine on this card. So the RX 480 still holds up in 2023. To me, it seems like a baseline AMD version of the GTX 1060, where this is sort of the bare minimum you want to go to for today's latest games. Starfield will be the ultimate factor. I think it is the can it run crisis of 2023, and it is up to you whether or not that game alone is worth upgrading, because everything else ran pretty well. I was surprised at how many games were able to run at high or medium settings on this graphics card, and as long as you're running at 1080p, the RX 480 is still a pretty good buy. So there is an 8GB version of this card, but I think that the 4GB is fine for what it is. I don't know if you're going to get that much more performance out of the 8GB version, just because the card is weak enough to where it kind of seems like diminishing returns, but maybe I'm wrong and you should research on your own, because I don't have an 8GB card to test. But when it goes from anywhere between $40 and $70, I think this is still a great card if you are looking to pick one up for a secondary build to play esports titles on, and even some AAA games. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, like, subscribe, do what you usually do, and as always, buy yourself something nice. It's good to be back.